The Interstellar Coalition Academy floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal flower. Its silver arms stretched out around a central hub, each one holding training rooms, living quarters, and laboratories. Inside those metal corridors, young beings from across the galaxy learned to work together. At least, that was the idea. NAR. I stood in the observation deck, watching the stars through the massive window. She had been at the academy for 3 months now, and she still felt like an outsider. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her gray uniform hung loosely on her thin frame. To the other species, she looked fragile, small, weak. That was exactly what she wanted them to think. Earth had joined the Galactic Coalition only 50 years ago. Humans were the new kids in a school where some species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Most aliens saw humans as primitive creatures from a backward planet. They didn't understand that Earth was different from their worlds, heavier, harsher, more dangerous. Nari watched her reflection in the glass. She was 18 years old, but she had been training since she was 6. Her father ran a martial arts school in Bizin, and her mother was a former soldier. They taught her that strength wasn't about size. It was about timing, leverage, and never giving up. The door behind her opened with a soft hiss. A young man walked in, his face buried in a datapad. He didn't notice Nari at first. When he looked up and saw her, he smiled nervously. "Oh, sorry. I didn't know anyone was here," he said in Korean. His accent was slightly off, the way spacers spoke when they grew up away from Earth. "It's okay," Nari replied in the same language. "I was just leaving." "Wait," the young man said. "You're from Earth? Like, actually from Earth?" Nari nodded. "Bizin, you?" "Mars Colony 7, but my parents were from Seoul." He stepped closer and extended his hand. "I'm Hyan, engineering track." She shook his hand. His grip was weak compared to hers, but she made sure not to squeeze too hard. "Nari, combat track." Hyan's eyes widened. "Combat? But you're so—" He stopped himself, embarrassed. "Small?" Nari finished for him. "I get that a lot here." "I was going to say brave," Hyan said. "The combat track is mostly Vrokter and Dravian warriors. Those guys are huge." Nari shrugged. "Size isn't everything." They talked for a while. Hyan told her about his family, about growing up in the Mars domes where gravity was lighter than Earth. He came to the academy to prove that humans belonged in space, that they could be more than just newcomers. Nari liked him immediately. He reminded her of her younger brother, earnest and hopeful. Over the next few weeks, Nari saw Hyan in the mess hall and the recreation areas. He was always studying, always working on some project or simulation. Other human cadets sometimes joined him, but mostly he kept to himself. The aliens ignored him, which was normal. Different species usually stuck to their own kind. Then everything changed. Nari was in the training room, running through combat drills when she heard shouting from the corridor. She stepped out to see a crowd gathered around a view screen. On the screen were the results of the latest tactical simulation test. At the top of the list was a human name, Hyan. The room fell silent when 3 massive figures pushed through the crowd. The Vrokter were reptilian warriors from a high-gravity planet. Their scales were thick and gray, and their eyes glowed yellow in the artificial light. They were easily twice the size of any human, with powerful muscles and sharp claws. The leader was named Crag. He was the biggest of the 3, with old scars across his face that marked him as a veteran fighter. He stared at the screen for a long moment, then turned and walked away without a word. His 2 companions followed, but Nari saw his hands. They were clenched into fists, claws extended. She found Hyan in the library later that day. He was surrounded by datapads, studying stellar navigation charts. He looked up when she sat down across from him. "Hey, Nari, what's up?" I saw the test results, she said quietly. Congratulations. Hyan's smile faded. Yeah, thanks. You don't seem happy about it. He sighed and put down his datapad. I beat Crag's score by 3 points. 3 points out of 1,000. And now he looks at me like I killed his family. The Vrokter take combat rankings seriously, Nari said. It's part of their culture. I know. I tried to apologize, tried to explain it was just luck. But he won't talk to me. None of them will. Hyan rubbed his eyes. Maybe I should just drop the class. Take the test again and fail on purpose. Don't do that, Nari said firmly. You earned that score. What's the point if it just makes enemies? Nari leaned forward. The point is showing that we belong here. That humans can compete with any species. Isn't that why you came? Hyan didn't answer, but she could see the conflict in his eyes. Over the next few days, the situation got worse. The Vrokter trio started showing up wherever Hyan went. They didn't touch him, didn't threaten him directly. They just stood nearby, watching, waiting. Other cadets noticed and gave Hyan more space. Nobody wanted to get involved in Vrokter business. Nari watched from a distance. She saw how Hyan's shoulders tensed when the 3 warriors entered a room. She saw how he started taking different routes to class, eating at odd hours to avoid them. She saw him getting smaller, quieter, more afraid. She also watched the Vrokter. She studied how they moved, how they fought in training exercises. They were strong and fast, but they were also predictable. They relied on power and intimidation. They expected their opponents to be afraid. One evening, Nari was walking back to her quarters when she passed Hyan in the corridor. He looked exhausted, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Are you okay? She asked. I'm fine. He lied. Hyan, I said I'm fine. He hurried past her without another word. Nari stood in the empty corridor, thinking. She had been keeping a low profile since arriving at the academy. She deliberately performed at average levels in her classes, never showing her full abilities. She didn't want attention. She didn't want to become a target like Hyan, but watching him suffer in silence felt wrong. Her father's words echoed in her mind. Strength means nothing if you don't use it to protect others. The next morning, Nari went to the combat training room early. She set the gravity to Earth normal and began her real workout, the one she never did in front of others. 2 hours of striking, grappling, and movement drills. When she finished, her uniform was soaked with sweat, but her mind was clear. Whatever was going to happen with Hyan and the Vrokter, she would be ready. The pressure on Hyan grew worse with each passing day. Nari watched it happen like a slow-motion collapse. In the mess hall, the Vrokter would take the table next to his, speaking loudly in their harsh language about weakness and dishonor. During training exercises, they would pair up near him, demonstrating combat moves with excessive force that shook the floor. The academy instructors did nothing. When Nari asked her combat teacher about it, the elderly Centaurian just shook his head. Cultural differences, Cadet. The Vrokter have their ways. It will resolve itself. Resolve itself how? Nari asked. The instructor didn't answer. Nari started following Hyan at a distance, making sure he got to his quarters safely each night. She noticed that the Vrokter were testing him, pushing boundaries. They would block corridors, forcing Hyan to ask them to move. They would accidentally knock his datapad from his hands. Small things, but each one designed to humiliate and provoke. Hyan never fought back. He apologized constantly, tried to stay out of their way, made himself smaller and quieter. To the Vrokter, this was cowardice. To Nari, it was heartbreaking. One night, Nari returned to her quarters to find her roommate waiting up for her. Questions was a Litharian, a being made of living crystal that refracted light into rainbow patterns. She communicated through harmonic vibrations that the translation implants converted to speech. "You are worried about the human male?" Question said. It wasn't a question. Nari sat on her bunk. "That obvious? You watch him constantly. You follow him through the station." Quest's crystalline body chimed softly. "You should stop. This is Vrokter business now." "What does that mean?" "It means they have claimed him as their target. If you interfere, they will claim you too." Questions moved closer, her inner light pulsing with concern. "Nari, I have been at this academy for 4 cycles. I have seen this before. Humans always lose against Vrokter. It is biology. They are simply stronger." "Strength isn't just about muscles," Nari said. "Perhaps not on your world. But here, in this place, it is often enough." Questions dimmed slightly. "I am sorry. I know you want to help your fellow human. But some fights cannot be won." Nari lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. She thought about her training back home, about the philosophy her father taught her. A true warrior knows when to fight and when to walk away. But they never abandon those who need protection. The next day started normally. Nari went to her morning classes, ate breakfast alone, and headed to combat training. She was halfway through a sparring session when an alert chimed on her datapad. It was a message forwarded from the Academy network, sent to all human cadets. "Hyan has received a challenge," another human student told her. The Vrokter made it public. Nari pulled up the message. It was simple and direct. "You dishonored our trial with your presence at the top of our rankings. Meet us in Cargo Bay 7 after evening meal. Come along. Prove you are not a coward, or accept that humans do not belong among warriors." The message was signed by all 3 Vrokter. Nari's blood ran cold. Cargo Bay 7 was in the lower maintenance section of the station. There were no cameras there, no instructors, no security patrols. If Chaim went, he would be alone with 3 trained warriors who had every reason to hurt him. She found Chaim in his quarters. He was sitting on his bunk, staring at his datapad with the message still displayed on the screen. "You're not going," Nari said. Chaim looked up at her with tired eyes. "I have to." "No, you don't. This is a trap." "I know it's a trap." He set the datapad down. "But if I don't go, everyone will know I'm a coward. Every human in this academy will be judged by what I do next. If I run, we all look weak. If you go, they'll put you in medical bay for weeks. Maybe months. Maybe," Chaim said quietly. "But at least I'll go down fighting. At least I'll show that humans don't run from challenges." Nari wanted to shake him, to make him understand that there was no honor in getting beaten for no reason. But she saw something in his eyes that made her stop. It was the same look her mother had when she talked about the war, about standing your ground even when the odds were impossible. "What time?" Nari asked. 1900 hours. "Don't go early. Don't go late." Exactly at 1900. She turned to leave. "Nari?" Chaim called after her. "Thanks for caring. But don't follow me this time. I need to do this alone." She didn't answer. She just left. The rest of the day dragged on forever. Nari went through her classes mechanically, not really paying attention. Her mind was racing, planning, calculating. She knew the layout of Cargo Bay 7 from her study of the station's blueprints. She knew there were maintenance shafts that connected to it, ventilation ducts large enough for a human to crawl through. At 1800 hours, she went to the mess hall and forced herself to eat. She needed energy for what was coming. She saw the 3 Vrokter at their usual table, talking in low voices. They looked excited, eager. This wasn't about honor for them. This was about entertainment. At 1830, Nari made her way to the maintenance level. The corridors here were dimmer, older. This part of the station was rarely used except by repair crews. She found the maintenance shaft she was looking for and climbed inside. It was tight even for a small frame, but she had trained in worse conditions. She crawled through the ducts, following the path she had memorized. She could hear her own breathing, feel her heart beating steadily in her chest. There was no fear. Fear was something you felt when you weren't prepared. Nari had been preparing for this her entire life. At 1855. She reached a ventilation grate that looked down into Cargo Bay 7. The three Vrokter were already there, positioning themselves around the room. They were spreading out, cutting off escape routes. Crag stood in the center, flexing his claws. This was planned, practiced. They had done this before dawn at exactly 1900 hours. The cargo bay door opened. Hyan walked in, his back straight and his head up. He was terrified. Nari could see that. But he walked in anyway. The door closed behind him with a heavy clang. "You came," Crag said, his voice echoing in the large space. "Perhaps you have some honor after all." "I came to apologize," Hyan said. "I never meant to disrespect your culture or your achievements. The test results were just numbers. They don't mean anything. They mean everything." Crag roared. "They say that a weak human is better than a Vrokter warrior. They lie." The other two Vrokter moved to flank Hyan, blocking any path to the door. Hyan backed up until he hit a stack of storage containers. There was nowhere left to go. Crag raised his massive fist, claws extended. "We will teach you your place, human. This will hurt, but you will live. You will remember this lesson." Nari watched through the grate, every muscle in her body coiled and ready. She had already planned her entry point, her angle of approach. She had mapped out every possible move in her mind. Crag's fist began to fall, aimed at Hyan's face. That was when Nari moved. Nari dropped from the ventilation shaft in complete silence. The station's lighter gravity, only 6/10 of Earth normal, made her fall slow and controlled. She hit the ground in a crouch behind a stack of cargo containers. Hidden from view, Crag's fist was still moving downward, a crushing blow that would break bones. Hyan's eyes were closed, bracing for impact. The other two Vrokter watched with hungry expressions, eager to see human blood. Time seemed to slow as Nari sprinted forward. Her footsteps made no sound on the metal floor. She had learned to move quietly as a child, playing games in her father's dojo. But this was no game. She reached Crag just as his fist was inches from Hyan's face. Her hand shot out and caught Crag's massive wrist, stopping the punch completely. The cargo bay fell absolutely silent. 4 pairs of eyes turned to stare at her. Crag's yellow eyes widened in shock. The other two Vrokter froze in place. Hyan opened his eyes and gasped. "That's enough," Nari said calmly in Galactic Common. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Crag tried to pull his arm free. His muscles flexed, tendons standing out like cables under his scales. He was strong enough to lift a small vehicle. Nari's grip didn't budge. Crag's shock turned to anger. He pulled harder, putting his full strength into it. The other Vrokter stepped closer, unsure what they were seeing. A human girl, barely half Crag's size, was holding the strongest warrior in the academy without any effort. "Human," Crag growled, his voice low and dangerous. "Release me now, or you will face the consequences." Nari looked up at him. Her expression was calm, almost bored. "Walk away. This doesn't concern you anymore. Everything about this human concerns me." Crag roared. He swung his other hand at her, claws extended to rake across her face. Nari moved without thinking. She had spent 10,000 hours training for moments exactly like this. Her body knew what to do before her mind finished processing the threat. She released Crag's wrist and ducked under his wild swing. His claws passed through empty air where her head had been. In the same fluid motion, she grabbed his extended arm, twisted her hips, and used his own momentum against him. Crag's massive body flipped through the air and crashed into the deck with a sound like thunder. The cargo bay shook from the impact. The second Vrokter, whose name was Thork, charged at her from the side. He was faster than Crag, more aggressive. His shoulder was aimed at her midsection, a tackle that would crush her against the wall. Nari waited until the last possible moment. Then she dropped flat to the floor. In the low gravity, she could move impossibly fast. Thork's charge carried him over her, and she kicked up with both legs, catching him in the stomach. His own momentum combined with her strength sent him flying across the bay. He crashed into a stack of supply crates that collapsed around him with a deafening clatter. The third Vrokter, Vesh, was more cautious. He circled her slowly, claws extended, looking for an opening. His eyes tracked her movements, analyzing, calculating. He was a trained fighter, not just a brawler. "You are fast for a human," Vesh said. "But speed will not save you. There are 3 of us." Behind him, Crag was getting to his feet, shaking his head. Thork was pushing himself out of the debris, scales scrapped and bleeding. They were hurt but far from defeated. Nari stood in the center of the cargo bay, perfectly balanced, breathing easily. Hyan had pressed himself against the wall, watching with wide eyes. "Last chance," Nari said. "Walk away." "We are Vrokter," Crag roared. "We do not walk away from weakness." All 3 of them attacked at one shot. This was what they had been trained for, coordinated combat. Crag came straight at her with powerful strikes. Vesh circled to her left, looking for an opening. Thork came from the right, cutting off her escape routes. They moved like a machine, like they had practiced this formation 1,000 times, but they had never fought someone like Nari before. She moved like water flowing around rocks. Every punch that came at her found empty air. Every grab caught nothing. She used their size against them, staying in close where their long reach was a disadvantage. She struck at joints and nerve clusters, precise hits that made their limbs go numb. Crag swung a massive fist at her head. She dropped under it and swept his legs. As he fell, she rolled over his back and kicked Vesh in the knee. There was a sick cracking sound, and Vesh howled in pain, collapsing to one side. Thork grabbed for her from behind, his powerful arms trying to trap her in a crushing hold. Nari twisted in his grip, found his pressure points, and drove her thumbs into the nerve clusters under his jaw. His arms went slack immediately, and she slipped free like smoke. She spun and delivered a kick to his chest that sent him staggering back. In the low gravity, he couldn't recover his balance. He fell hard, gasping for air. Kragg was the only one still standing. Blood ran from a cut over his eye, and his breathing was heavy. He stared at Nari with something that looked like respect mixed with fear. "What are you?" he asked quietly. Nari stepped forward. She wasn't even breathing hard. Her heart rate was elevated, but steady. This was just training for her, no different than sparring at her father's dojo. "You want to know what I am?" she said. "I'm from a planet where the gravity is twice as strong as here. I'm from a species that hunted animals by running after them until they collapsed from exhaustion. We didn't have claws or fangs or armor. We had endurance. We had the ability to keep going when everything else gave up." She took another step forward. Crag took a step back. "My ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and wars. We survived because we were too stubborn to die. We survived because we protected each other." She gestured to Hyan. "That human you were going to hurt? He's my people, and we don't abandon our people." Crag looked at his companions. Vesh was clutching his damaged knee, his face twisted in pain. Thork was sitting against the wall, still trying to catch his breath. They were beaten, and they all knew it. "You fight with honor," Crag said slowly, "but without hatred. You could have killed us. I don't want to kill you, Nari said. I want you to understand. Humans aren't weak. We're just different. Our strength comes from different places. The cargo bay door suddenly opened with a hiss. Security officers poured in, weapons drawn. The security chief, a gray-furred Centauran veteran, took in the scene with experienced eyes. 3 Vrokter warriors on the ground, injured but alive. 1 small human girl standing in the center, unmarked. Another human cowering against the wall. The security chief's expression didn't change, but his ears flicked forward with interest. Another Deathworlder incident, he muttered. Everyone is coming with me, he announced. The Academy board will want to hear about this. As the security officers helped the injured Vrokter to their feet, Crag looked back at Nari one last time. Something had changed in his eyes. The contempt was gone, replaced with curiosity. Nari walked over to Hyan and helped him stand. His legs were shaking, and he looked like he might pass out. Are you okay? She asked softly in Korean. You just fought 3 Vrokta warriors, Hyan whispered. Alone, and you won. I didn't win, Nari corrected him. I just convinced them to stop. As they were led out of the cargo bay, neither of them noticed the small recording device mounted in the corner of the room. The security cameras might have been disabled, but someone had been recording the entire fight. The medical bay was sterile and cold. Nari sat on an examination table while a medical scanner passed over her body, checking for injuries. The doctor, a multi-limbed arachnoid named Sylph, made clicking sounds of confusion. I do not understand, Sylph said, her translator converting the clicks into speech. You engaged in combat with 3 Vrokter warriors. You should have broken bones, internal bleeding, severe trauma. But you have nothing, not even bruising. I'm fine, Nari said. Yes, but you should not be fine. This is unusual. Sylph checked her scanner again. Your heart rate during the incident never exceeded 140 beats per minute. That is elevated but not extreme. Were you even trying? Nari didn't answer. Across the medical bay, behind a privacy screen, the 3 Vrokter were being treated. She could hear them talking in low voices, occasionally growling in pain as Sylph's assistant worked on their injuries. The security chief, Commander Rask, stood in the doorway with his arms crossed. He had been watching her for the past hour, saying nothing. Finally, he spoke. In my 20 years at this academy, I have seen many fights. Most of them are stupid. Most of them are pointless. He walked over to her table. But I have never seen a cadet show such precision. You hurt them just enough to stop them, no more. That takes skill and control. I was defending another cadet, Nari said quietly. You were, Rask agreed. But you also invaded a fight that was technically a cultural matter between the Vrokter and another cadet. Some might say you interfered where you had no right. Some might say the academy should protect all cadets equally, Nari replied. Rask's whiskers twitched in what might have been a smile. Some might say that yes. He pulled out a datapad. This recording was found in Cargo Bay 7. Someone installed it illegally, but it captured the entire fight. He turned the datapad so Nari could see. The video showed everything. From the moment she dropped from the vent to the final conversation with Crag, it was clear, detailed, and damning. This recording has already spread through the Academy network, Rask said. Every cadet has seen it by now. You are famous, whether you want to be or not. Nari closed her eyes. This was exactly what she had been trying to avoid. In the mess hall, the recording played on every screen. Cadets from dozens of species crowded around to watch. They saw a small human girl catch a Vrokter's punch mid-swing. They saw her throw warriors twice her size like they weighed nothing. They saw her move with speed and grace that seemed impossible. The reactions were mixed. Some species watched with admiration. others with fear. The Vrokter cadets watched with something else entirely, a mixture of shock and grudging respect. One of them, a young warrior named Cora, played the video back in slow motion. She studied every move Nari made, analyzing the technique. "Look at this," she said to her classmates. "She never uses more force than necessary. Every strike hits a pressure point or joint. She uses our weight and momentum against us. This is not brawling. This is art? Art?" Another Vrokter scoffed. "She is a human. Humans are weak." "Then explain how she defeated 3 of our finest warriors without breathing hard," Kara said. "Explain how her heart rate stayed calm while theirs exceeded 200 beats per minute. Explain how she walked away unmarked while they needed medical attention." The room fell silent in the combat training section. Instructors were also watching the recording. The head combat instructor, a massive Dravian named Warboss Thax, watched it 3 times before speaking. "I have been teaching combat for 30 years, he said to his fellow instructors. "I have trained champions from a dozen worlds, and I have never seen technique like this." He pointed at the screen. "The way she reads their movements, anticipates their attacks, uses the environment. This is a master's level skill in a first-year cadet." "She is human," another instructor said. "They are a young species. How could she have such training?" "Perhaps," Thax said slowly, "we have underestimated what a young species can achieve. Earth's gravity is 1.6 times our standard. Their atmosphere is oxygen-rich, giving them greater endurance. They evolved as persistence hunters, built for long chases and sustained effort." He paused. "And we have been treating them like weaklings." Meanwhile, Hyan was in his quarters, also watching the recording. His hands shook as he held the datapad. Nari had saved him. She had put herself in danger to protect him. And now everyone in the academy knew that a human had defeated 3 Vrokter warriors. There was a knock on his door. When he opened it, he found 3 other human cadets standing there. He recognized them from the mess hall, but had never spoken to them before. "We saw the video," one of them said. A young woman named Ji Woo. "We wanted to check on you. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Hyan said. "Nari protected me. She protected all of us," another cadet said. His name was Minho. "She showed them that humans aren't pushovers, that we can fight back." More human cadets arrived over the next hour. They filled Hyan's small quarters, talking excitedly about the fight, about what it meant for them. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Hyan didn't feel alone. Back in the medical bay, Nari was finally cleared to leave. As she walked out, she passed by the recovery area where the 3 Vrokter were resting. Crag saw her and raised his hand. "Human, wait." Nari stopped and turned. Crag pushed himself up to a sitting position, wincing at the pain in his ribs. "I underestimated you," he said simply. "I judge you by your size and assumed weakness." This was foolish. "Yes, it was," Nari agreed. Crag blinked in surprise at her bluntness. Then he laughed, a harsh barking sound. "You do not soften truth. I respect this." He looked at his injured companions. "We sought to teach the human Hyan a lesson about his place. Instead, you taught us a lesson about ours." "What lesson is that?" Nari asked. "That strength comes in many forms. That a warrior must respect all opponents, regardless of their appearance." He met her eyes. "That we Vrokter are not the only warriors in the galaxy." Nari nodded slowly. "Will there be more trouble between you and Hyan?" "No," Crag said firmly. "The matter is settled. He proved his courage by coming to face us. You proved your strength by protecting him. Both are worthy of respect. And if other Vrokter see it differently..." Crag's expression hardened. "Then they will answer to me. I have made a fool of myself. I will not allow others to repeat my mistake." As Nari left the medical bay, she found Commander Rask waiting for her in the corridor. "The Academy Board has made a decision about your actions," he said. "Officially, you violated protocol by interfering in a cultural dispute. You will receive a formal warning in your file." Nari nodded. She had expected as much. "Unofficially," Ross continued, and his whiskers twitched again, "the board recognizes that you prevented what could have been a serious injury. They are also aware that this incident has highlighted some problems with how we handle interspecies conflicts." He handed her a new datapad. "You are being offered a position as a teaching assistant in the combat program. The instructors want to learn your techniques." Nari took the datapad, surprised. "I'm just a first-year cadet." "You are a first-year cadet who defeated 3 advanced warriors without sustaining injury," Ross corrected. "That makes you qualified." He started to walk away, then paused. "One more thing. That recording has been shared beyond the Academy. The Galactic Coalition Military Command has seen it. Expect more attention in the coming days." As he left, Nari stood alone in the corridor, holding the datapad. Her quiet life at the Academy was over. Everything was about to change. The weeks following the cargo bay incident changed everything at the Academy. The recording of Nari's fight spread beyond the station, reaching military academies, coalition command centers, and civilian networks across the galaxy. Suddenly, the weak humans from Earth became a subject of intense interest. Research teams analyzed the fight frame by frame. Scientists studied Earth's environmental conditions, comparing it to other inhabited worlds. They discovered what many had overlooked. Earth was classified as a Class 4 death world, meaning its conditions were harsh enough that most species would struggle to survive there. Without protection, the gravity alone was significant. At 1.0 g, Earth's pull was nearly double the galactic standard of 0.6 g. Humans who grew up there developed denser bones, stronger muscles, and cardiovascular systems built for high-pressure environments. In lighter gravity, they could move faster and hit harder than their frames suggested. But it wasn't just physical. Researchers found that human psychology was shaped by their planet's dangers. They had evolved as persistence hunters, chasing prey for hours or even days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. This gave them unusual mental endurance and a stubborn refusal to quit, even when logic said they should. The Academy Board called an emergency meeting to discuss new protocols. Commander Rask presented their findings to the senior instructors and administrators. "We have been treating human cadets as if they were fragile," he said. "We lowered physical requirements for them. We separated them in training. We assumed they needed protection." He pulled up data on his display. "But humans don't need protection. They need appropriate challenge." The Academy implemented sweeping changes. Human cadets were given access to Earth gravity training rooms. Combat classes were restructured to include training methods from Earth martial arts. Most importantly, the unofficial policy of ignoring interspecies conflicts was abolished. All cadets, regardless of species, would be held to the same standards and receive the same protection. Nari found herself at the center of these changes. As a teaching assistant, she demonstrated human combat techniques to instructors and advanced students. At first, many species were skeptical. How could techniques designed for weak humans be useful to stronger species? Then they tried them. A Dravian instructor, built like a mountain with 4 arms, attempted to spar with Nari using her techniques. She showed him how to redirect force instead of meeting it head-on, how to target weak points instead of relying on strength, how to use an opponent's momentum against them. Within minutes, he was on the floor, tapping out. "Incredible," he gasped. "I felt like I was fighting myself." Crag also became an unexpected ally. After recovering from his injuries, he approached Nari in the training hall. Several cadets stopped to watch, expecting another confrontation. "I wish to train with you," Crag said formally. "If you will permit it." Nari studied him. His pride had been wounded, but there was genuine respect in his eyes now. "Why?" "Because I was defeated, and I do not know why," Crag said honestly. "My strength failed. My speed failed. Everything I relied upon was useless against you. I must understand this, or I will never improve." So they trained together. Crag learned that raw power had limitations. Nari learned that Rokter endurance was formidable in its own way. They pushed each other, learning from each other. Other cadets, seeing a Rokter warrior and a human girl working together, began to question their own assumptions about species compatibility. Hyan, meanwhile, found new confidence. The other human cadets looked up to him now, not because he had fought, but because he had been brave enough to face the Rokter even when he knew he would lose. They started studying together, forming a support network that helped all of them succeed. One evening, 6 months after the cargo bay incident, Nari stood in the observation deck watching the stars. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Crag approaching. He had taken to visiting her here sometimes, enjoying the quiet. "The graduation ceremony is tomorrow," Crag said, standing beside her at the window. His reflection in the glass showed healed scars from their fight. "I know," Nari said. "Are you nervous?" "Rokter do not feel nervousness," Crag said automatically. Then he paused. "But yes, I'm uncertain about what comes next." Nari smiled. 6 months ago, he would never have admitted such a thing. "You'll be fine. You're one of the best tactical minds in our class." "I learned that from watching Hyan," Crag admitted. "And I learned combat efficiency from watching you. Perhaps the lesson is that we all have something to teach, if we are willing to learn." The next day, the graduation ceremony filled the Academy's main hall. Cadets from dozens of species stood in neat rows, wearing dress uniforms. Family members watched from viewing screens, connected from across the galaxy. When Nari's name was called, she walked across the stage to receive her commission as a coalition officer. The applause was loud, coming from cadets of every species. She saw Crag clapping with his massive hands. She saw Quess's crystalline body flashing with proud colors. She saw dozens of human cadets cheering. Hyan graduated with honors, his tactical scores among the highest in Academy history. As he crossed the stage, he looked to where Nari stood with the other graduates and smiled. She had protected him when he needed it most. Now he would carry that lesson forward, protecting others in turn. After the ceremony, Nari and Hyan found themselves on the observation deck one last time. Tomorrow they would leave for their first assignments. Tomorrow they would scatter across the galaxy, serving on different ships and stations. "Do you think things will really be different now?" Hyan asked, looking out at the stars. "Nar, I thought about the past 6 months." She thought about Crag's transformation from enemy to friend. She thought about the new training protocols, the research into human abilities, the way other species now watched human cadets with curiosity instead of dismissal. "One stop punch at a time," she said. Hyan laughed. "That's not really an answer. It's the only answer I have." Nari turned from the window. "I didn't start a revolution. I just protected a friend. Everything else happened because people were ready to see things differently." Below them, in the training halls, they could see new cadets arriving for orientation. Among them were dozens of humans, more than had ever enrolled before. They walked through the corridors with their heads held high, confident in a way previous human cadets had not been. "They're not afraid," Hyan observed. "No," Nari agreed. "They're not." One of the new human cadets, a young woman named Sora, paused in the corridor below. She was looking at a memorial wall that had been recently installed. It showed images from significant moments in Academy history. Right in the center was a still frame from the cargo bay recording. Nari catching Crag's punch. Her face calm and determined. Below the image was a simple plaque. Strength comes in many forms. Judged not by appearance, but by character and courage. Sora stood there for a long moment, studying the image. Then she smiled, adjusted her uniform, and continued down the corridor with confident steps. Commander Rask, watching from his office, made a note in his log. Academy integration proceeding well. Incident 6 months prior has fundamentally changed interspecies relations. Recommend continued monitoring, but outlook positive. Humans have proven they belong here, not through conquest, but through courage and competence. Perhaps that is the most important lesson we can teach. Nari and Hyan left the observation deck and headed to the transport bay. Their ships were waiting, ready to carry them to their new assignments. As they walked through the academy one last time, they passed cadets from dozens of species. Some nodded respectfully. Others smiled. A few Vrokta warriors raised their fists in salute. The age of humanity in the stars had truly begun. Not with weapons or threats, but with one girl who refused to let injustice stand. Not with war, but with the simple act of protecting someone who needed help. Sometimes. That's all it takes to change a galaxy. Nari boarded her transport, took one last look at the academy through the viewport, and smiled. Whatever challenges waited among the stars, she was ready. They all were. The cargo bay door closed, the engines hummed to life, and the transport launched into the darkness, carrying a new generation of officers into an uncertain but hopeful future. One-stop punch had changed everything. But it was only the beginning.